Isn't it strange how the things that look like a gift are often the traps we stumble into? You see it shining, promising ease, excitement, satisfaction, and your mind flirts with the idea for just a second, and suddenly the hesitation becomes temptation. You tell yourself you're careful, that you can step back, that you're too smart to fall for it, but the world doesn't operate on caution. It moves faster, quieter, and sharper than you expect. And by the time you notice the pull, you're already leaning in, curiosity blurring the alarms your instincts screamed moments ago. And that's when danger grins at you, waiting for that tiny crack in your attention to make everything unravel in ways you didn't even imagine. The illusion of opportunity is one of the most dangerous things because it seduces with brightness while hiding the edges of the fall. You see it shining in the distance, perfect, irresistible, like everything you've been waiting for wrapped in a neat, shiny package, and your mind starts whispering, maybe this time it's different. That whisper grows louder because you're human, and hope, desire, curiosity, they don't arrive politely. They push, they nudge. They pretend to be reason while their real goal is distraction. You think you're observing, analyzing, weighing pros and cons, but that's the trick. The illusion knows how to look calculated, responsible, like logic itself led you here. As if every step you've taken was meant to guide you toward this golden door. You convince yourself it's an opportunity, something that could change your life, elevate you, solve problems, fulfill gaps you didn't even admit existed. And for a moment, it feels so real, so tangible, so inevitable, that ignoring it seems impossible. That's when danger is at its most beautiful. It doesn't scream, it doesn't threaten, it doesn't demand your attention in obvious ways. It smiles. It whispers, it glows just enough to make hesitation seem foolish. Your instincts may murmur warnings, but you tune them out because the illusion appeals to something deeper than reason, deeper than analysis. Desire is patient. Desire is subtle. It waits for the second you are tired, distracted, or hungry for change. It knows exactly how to dress itself up as an opportunity. Every thought that follows is contaminated by this perception. Maybe if I just take one step, just one small choice, everything will align perfectly. And you take the step. You tell yourself it's small, harmless, rational. The illusion of opportunity is brilliant because it teaches you to trust your own judgment while simultaneously eroding it. You begin to rationalize every signal, every anomaly, every hesitation, bending evidence toward the conclusion you secretly hope is true. Logic becomes a lens you use selectively, ignoring the red flags, the subtle inconsistencies, the moments that scream caution. And the more you step forward, the more invested you become, because human psychology is predictable. We fear regret more than we fear mistakes. We want to believe that the chance in front of us is the one that redeems all prior failures, all prior hesitations, all prior suffering. That belief is exactly what the illusion feeds on. It is patient, methodical, and clear. It allows just enough clarity to make you think you're making an informed choice, just enough hesitation to make you question yourself, and just enough appeal to keep you moving forward when any sensible part of you would have stepped back. Opportunity, real or imagined, rarely arrives with a guarantee. The illusion thrives in ambiguity, in the space between desire and reason, in the gap where curiosity outweighs caution, and you, like everyone else, are drawn into that gap, convinced that this time will be different, convinced that your instincts are overreacting, convinced that your past mistakes were only practice for this perfect moment. Every step you take feels almost inevitable, as if the universe itself is leading you here, but that's the brilliance of the illusion. It masquerades as destiny, while it's really just clever choreography designed to keep you off balance, to keep you questioning, to keep you addicted to the rush of what if. You begin to notice yourself ignoring signals you normally trust. You rationalize contradiction. You convince yourself that your doubts are overblown, that hesitation is weakness, that the signs pointing toward caution are actually signs of opportunity in disguise. And in that space, the illusion has you. You are willing to risk more than you realize because the reward is painted so vividly that the cost seems negligible, distant, or irrelevant. The illusion of opportunity is not just a test of decision-making. It is a test of attention, of perception, of your ability to distinguish between what is real and what is staged to manipulate desire. Every human falls for it at some point because it is designed to feel irresistible, to feel logical, to feel urgent, and to feel necessary. And while you think you are in control, the truth is that the illusion knows you better than you know yourself, predicting the exact moment when caution will falter and hope will overtake reason. And when that moment arrives, every step you take feels like progress, every hesitation feels foolish, every warning feels exaggerated, and the line between opportunity and trap disappears entirely, leaving you to realize too late that the brilliance you chased was never yours to hold. Subtle signs of danger are everywhere if you learn to see them, but most people ignore them because they look harmless, ordinary, even familiar. Danger rarely arrives screaming, flashing lights and sirens. It creeps in quietly, disguised, in shapes you trust, in voices you recognize, in patterns you've grown accustomed to. At first, the signs are so small that you can convince yourself they're coincidence, imagination, or paranoia. A glance, a tone, a fleeting hesitation, nothing that seems urgent enough to demand attention. And that's exactly why they work. The subtlety is the trap. You get used to ignoring the tiny alarms because they rarely explode into catastrophe immediately. You tell yourself, it's nothing, I'm overthinking, I've survived worse. But the mind underestimates how repetition and accumulation create momentum. Subtle signs pile on top of each other until the warning is unavoidable. Yet by then, you've already leaned too far in, invested too much trust, assumed too much control over things that were never yours to govern. Danger's signature's patience. It waits for moments of distraction, fatigue, or desire, knowing full well that humans are weakest when attention falters. You might notice the first signs and brush them aside because they feel insignificant, because life teaches you that overreaction is embarrassing, or because the pattern is almost too clever to recognize. But danger is clever. It knows how to hide in plain sight, how to disguise itself as opportunity, comfort, connection, or inevitability. Every signal you dismiss builds the framework for the moment you finally recognize it, and by then, the cost has multiplied. The subtle signs are not random. They have language of consequences, whispers from reality warning you that something is off, that balance is slipping, that a misstep could unravel more than you're prepared to handle. Yet humans are drawn to narrative, to hope, to explanations that fit the stories we want to tell ourselves, so we reinterpret warning as encouragement, risk as reward, hesitation as weakness. The subtlety works because we participate willingly. The signs exist, but we supply the disbelief. We tell ourselves that this time is different, that our perception is flawed, that the pattern is coincidental, and the illusion thrives because it is rarely violent, rarely immediate, rarely dramatic. Danger is patient. It bides its time until you are distracted enough to step into its path, believing you chose freely, believing you saw clearly, believing that reason guided you when in truth, subtle warning signals were ignored, dismissed, or rationalized away. You start to notice the signs after a while, when your gut tightens, when small discomfort refuses to be silenced, when things don't feel right, but you can't articulate why. That discomfort is the language of caution, subtle, almost invisible, but persistent, and yet in that moment you debate, do I act on this? Do I step back? Or do I trust the allure that feels urgent, exciting, or necessary? Ignoring subtle signs is not just dangerous because consequences arrive. It is dangerous because ignoring them trains you to distrust your own perception. You begin second-guessing intuition, hesitation, instinct, and awareness, conditioning yourself to accept signals that feel wrong, to rationalize tension, to live in environments where danger grows quietly without confrontation. Subtle signs accumulate like shadows in corners you never check, until one day the weight of all those ignored moments crashes through with clarity, with force, with results that are undeniable. At that point, hindsight is sharp, unforgiving, and almost comical because the signs were always there, patiently waiting, whispering, nudging, and we miss them. But subtle signs of danger are not only warnings, they are teachers. They reveal how perception can be clouded, how desire can blind, how trust can be manipulated, and how hesitation, once dismissed, can be the difference between survival and downfall. They force you to confront the uncomfortable truth that awareness is a skill, attention is armor, and ignoring whispers in favor of immediate gratification or false security always comes at a cost. You realize then that danger rarely shouts, because shouting would give you time to prepare. It creeps, it simmers, it disguises itself in familiarity until you are entangled enough to notice only when the consequences are already unfolding. And that is why subtlety is its greatest weapon, because it relies not on force, but on the human tendency to underestimate what seems small, harmless, or ordinary, luring you into a false sense of security until the entire structure collapses around the inattentive, unaware, or overconfident, leaving you to stare at the wreckage, wondering how something so quiet, so subtle, so seemingly insignificant, managed to dismantle everything you thought was safe and predictable. Curiosity as a trap is the oldest game in the book, and yet we fall for it every single time because it dresses itself in innocence. Just one look, just one question, just one small step, it whispers soft enough to bypass the alarm bells your instincts have been screaming for years. Curiosity doesn't need force, it only needs attention, and attention is easier to give than resistance, especially when the thing it tempts you with is coated in the illusion of harmlessness. You convince yourself you're rational, that you're observing, analyzing, controlling your movement, but curiosity doesn't care about control. It doesn't care about reason. It only cares about engagement, because engagement opens the door for the trap to take hold. At first, it feels productive, exciting, even like you're gaining insight, knowledge, power. You tell yourself that curiosity is a strength, that exploring the unknown is bravery. And for a while it is. But traps hide in the familiar, and curiosity is familiar. It feels safe. It feels justified. Step by step, question by question, thought by thought, you drift closer to the edge of consequences that were never obvious at the start. The trap is patient. It doesn't rush you. It only waits for moments when you've let your guard down, moments when desire, boredom, or hope tip the scale just slightly toward risk. By the time you notice, the line between choice and compulsion has blurred, and the thing you thought was harmless has already started to shape your decisions, your perception, your expectation. Curiosity disguises itself as opportunity, as exploration, as growth. It gives you a reason to ignore warning signals, a reason to dismiss hesitation, a reason to rationalize discomfort. It's fine, you tell yourself, I can handle it, I'm smart enough, I'm careful enough, but no amount of rationality undoes the subtle seduction of engagement. Every small step inward feels voluntary, natural, inevitable, while outside forces tighten, shift, manipulate, and guide without your awareness. You begin to notice yourself ignoring instincts you would normally trust. You explain away anxiety, rationalize tension, justify doubt, because curiosity teaches you that caution is weakness and hesitation is wasted time. It whispers that knowledge is power, forgetting to mention that some knowledge comes at a cost you weren't prepared to pay. And that's the brilliance of the trap. It is silent, almost invisible, shaping behavior through seemingly trivial choices that accumulate until the outcome is irreversible. Curiosity feeds on narrative, on the human need to connect dots, to see patterns, to anticipate answers. It disguises the weight of consequence under the excitement of potential revelation. Every just one more feels justified, logical, harmless, until the cumulative effect bends reality around you, reshaping expectations, habits, and decisions in ways that only become clear once the trap has already sprung. You start to realize, sometimes too late, that the moments of hesitation you ignored, the alarms you rationalized, the instincts you overruled were the only things standing between control and entanglement. Curiosity doesn't ask for attention, it demands it. It doesn't threaten, it invites. It doesn't coerce, it seduces. And the moment you respond, you're already halfway in, already invested, already walking a path that narrows with every choice. The danger is not obvious at first. It hides behind fascination with the unknown, with the forbidden, with the hidden, because humans are wired to explore, to question, to engage. That wiring is exploited. Curiosity doesn't scream. It smiles, it teases, it waits quietly for your trust, your indulgence, your lack of vigilance. And by the time you sense the weight of your actions, the consequences of your engagement, the call of your innocent curiosity, it is too late to step back without leaving pieces of yourself behind. The trap has taken root because curiosity doesn't need force, it only needed you to care, to wonder, to peek, to step. And in that small engagement lies the power to dismantle caution, override reason, and turn a single innocent choice into a cascade of inevitability, leaving you to marvel at how something so simple, so natural, so human could be so perfectly, ruthlessly, and quietly dangerous. Ignoring instinctual warnings is one of the most subtle yet devastating mistakes a person can make, because instincts are not polite suggestions. They are the body and mind speaking in a language honed by survival, by experience, by countless small lessons you may not even remember learning. The moment you hear that whisper of caution, that twinge of discomfort, that hesitation that refuses to be silenced, it is not coincidence. It is the accumulation of everything your mind and body know that your conscious mind refuses to admit. But humans are strange creatures. We are trained to doubt ourselves, to rationalize fear, to ignore the quiet signals that do not fit into the narrative we've constructed about control, capability, and inevitability. We ignore the twinge of doubt because it seems inconvenient, embarrassing, or irrational. We tell ourselves that the instinct is overreacting, that it's paranoia, that we've survived before and can survive again. And yet, ignoring those instincts is a dangerous game, because instincts are rarely wrong, and they operate on layers of awareness we don't consciously access. The first time you dismiss a warning, it feels harmless. You move forward with confidence, reasoning that hesitation is weakness, that caution is overcomplication, that the world demands boldness, not doubt. You tell yourself that fear is for the unprepared, for the unskilled, for those who can't handle the stakes. And sometimes that works. Sometimes you are correct. But ignoring instinct repeatedly trains your mind to mistrust the language your own body speaks. That is when subtle damage begins. You start confusing instinct with indecision, intuition with overthinking, caution with incompetence. You tell yourself that the tension in your chest is meaningless, that the gut that tightens is irrelevant, that the signals that whisper stop are nothing more than noise, and the world rewards you temporarily for that ignorance. You take risks, you push boundaries, you ignore discomfort, and sometimes it pays off. That intermittent reinforcement convinces you that ignoring instincts is clever, that you are smarter, braver, sharper than those who listen. But danger is patient, precise, and methodical. It waits for patterns to emerge, for signals to be silenced, for the arrogance of repeated survival to accumulate. Every warning ignored builds momentum toward a point where consequences are no longer avoidable. And when they arrive with a clarity that is brutal, because the body remembers what the mind forgot. Every instinct you dismissed, every twinge you rationalized, every whisper you silenced becomes a thread in the tapestry of impact, unraveling predictably, inexorably, and yet somehow you are still surprised. Ignoring instinctual warnings is also a lesson in perception. Humans are drawn to logic, reasoning, and explanation. So instinct feels inconvenient because it often lacks concrete evidence, precise timing, or a clear path. It exists in the tension, in the pause, in the unease that your mind wishes would go away. You try to explain it, argue against it, analyze it, quantify it, and in doing so, you silence the very voice trying to guide you. And the tragedy of ignoring instinct is that it is both avoidable and unavoidable. Avoidable because you can learn to recognize the signals. Unavoidable because ignoring them feels natural, seductive, and justified, especially when courage and pride and desire are involved. You begin to see patterns in hindsight, the moments when hesitation could have saved you, the time when gut feelings demanded attention. The signs that screamed in silence but were never acted upon. Instinct is never loud. It is subtle, persistent, quiet, and it communicates through discomfort, curiosity, tension, and premonition. Ignoring it doesn't silence it. It merely grows the cost of your ignorance. You experience discomfort, confusion, and frustration when the consequences of dismissal arrive, and you recognize that the voice you ignored was never wrong, only unheard. And yet, humans continue to ignore instincts because the allure of control, power, or desire always outweighs the patient, quiet whisper. We rationalize, justify, and explain, and in doing so, we build our own traps. Ignoring instinct is the slow erosion of safety, the accumulation of risk, the subtle teacher of consequences that only makes itself known when retreat is impossible, when clarity arrives too late, when survival depends not on knowledge but on the mistake of previous dismissal, leaving you to confront how easily a body and mind that try to warn you could be silenced by your own willful disregard, and how the quiet voice of instinct, patient as it is, never truly abandons you but waits for the moment when the cost of ignoring it becomes undeniable. The cost of hesitation is a cruel companion because it disguises itself as prudence, as careful calculation, as wisdom. You tell yourself that pausing, reconsidering, waiting is smart, that it protects you from mistakes, from embarrassment, from failure. And for a while, it feels like it does. You feel in control, rational, cautious, almost superior to those who act without thought, who stumble forward recklessly. But hesitation has a dark side. It accumulates in silence, in the moments you didn't move, the chances you didn't take, the opportunity you allowed to slip through your fingers because you were waiting for perfect timing that never arrives. You convince yourself that waiting is preparation, that observation is strategy, that delay is protection. And in those moments, the cost quietly grows, almost invisible, almost imperceptible, until the moment arrives when you realize that the hesitation you considered careful was actually surrender. It doesn't strike all at once. The cost of hesitation is subtle, creeping into decisions, shaping outcomes, altering trajectories. You notice the small things first, the chance you didn't seize, the conversation you avoided, the risk you deferred, and you tell yourself that it wasn't that important, that another opportunity will come, that timing wasn't right. But life doesn't operate on fairness. Opportunities are fleeting, moments are precise, and hesitation allows them to pass while you debate, rationalize, and weigh, leaving you only with the memory of what could have been. The cruelty lies in the illusion of control. Hesitation feels safe, deliberate, intelligent. It masks the fact that inaction is also action. Every second you wait, every pause you justify, every thought you overanalyze shapes reality as much as any bold move ever could, and often it shapes it against your favor. You begin to notice patterns. People act, doors open, outcomes manifest, and you are still calculating, still waiting, still convincing yourself that readiness is key. But the moment for action is already gone. Hesitation is a thief disguised as prudence. It robs the future silently, leaving you to wonder why your careful planning never yielded the results you imagined. The cost is not always immediate. It grows over time, compounding in ways that are difficult to quantify. You can measure what you did, what you achieved, what you attempted. Hesitation is measured in what you didn't do, in the potential that went unrealized, in the impact you failed to create because the mind refused to commit, because the fear of misstep outweighed the thrill of engagement, because you believed that perfection was the prerequisite for action when it is in fact unattainable. And yet, hesitation seduces with logic. It convinces you that moving too soon is reckless, that patience is power, that waiting ensures better outcome. But life rarely waits. Timing is ruthless, indifferent, and precise. And the longer you hesitate, the greater the disparity grows between where you are and where you could have been, between the connections you might have made and the opportunity you allowed to dissolve, between potential realized and potential lost. Hesitation tests more than decision-making. It tests perception, courage, self-trust, and resilience. Every delayed step is a reflection of fear, doubt, or overthinking. And while those forces may feel protective, They are often corrosive, weakening momentum, obscuring intuition, and diminishing the capacity to act decisively when the moment arrives. And the tragedy is that the cost is invisible until it's undeniable. You don't see the opportunity that passed while you argued with yourself about timing. You don't notice the influence lost while you weighed consequences. You only realize in hindsight the cumulative weight of hesitation, how every tiny pause added to the gap between what was possible and what actually occurred. How the careful calculation you believed to be wisdom was actually a slow surrender to inevitability, leaving you to wonder why the moments that demanded courage were instead met with indecision, why the doors that could have opened closed quietly while you debated, why hesitation masquerading as prudence quietly eroded outcomes, connections, and potential until the cost becomes so real, so tangible, so unavoidable that it cannot be rationalized away. And the realization hits that hesitation, in its patience, subtlety, and quiet seduction, has quietly rewritten the path you thought you controlled. Small choices leading to risk are deceptively innocent because they rarely feel like decisions at all. You make them almost automatically on autopilot in moments when your attention is divided, your mind preoccupied, or your judgment clouded by desire, distraction, or habit. Each one seems insignificant in isolation, a fleeting thought acted upon without much reflection, and yet the accumulation of these micro-decisions shapes the trajectory of your life far more than the grand gestures you plan and anticipate. You tell yourself that it's harmless, that it's trivial, that it doesn't matter, that one small deviation won't change the bigger picture. And for a while, that reassurance feels true. The world seems to hum along. The consequences stay invisible, and the sense of control reassures you that nothing is truly at stake. But the brilliance of risk is in its subtlety, in its ability to disguise consequence under the guise of ordinary choice. You take the next step, and it feels just as harmless. You make a decision because it's convenient, comfortable, or tempting, and you convince yourself it's within your control, that you can reverse it if things go wrong. And you can't. The chain is already forming. The invisible threads of consequence begin to twist around your intentions, bending reality slowly, imperceptibly, until what seemed trivial becomes pivotal. The first realization usually comes in hindsight, a moment when patterns emerge and you see how one small choice led to another, like dominoes tipping silently, predictably, but with a speed that surprises. Risk doesn't shout, it whispers. It operates quietly, masking danger under the surface of familiarity. You are seduced by the apparent insignificance of decisions, lulled into believing that only monumental choices matter. Meanwhile, risk accumulates in increments, layering tension and potential catastrophe in ways too subtle to notice until the moment when it is unavoidable. Each micro-choice is a test of attention, of awareness, of willingness to confront uncertainty. The world rewards the inattentive by letting consequences incubate silently, delayed long enough for confidence to grow, for caution to weaken, for doubt to be rationalized away. And by the time the outcome manifests, it feels sudden, immediate, disproportionate, but it is not. It was built patiently, methodically, through countless tiny decisions ignored, underestimated, or misjudged. Human psychology compounds the danger because we underestimate the weight of incremental risk. We celebrate the big victories. We mourn the visible mistakes, but the quiet, creeping erosion caused by minor choices is often invisible until it is irreversible. That's why awareness is critical. Not every choice carries risk, but every choice carries potential, and potential can shift the balance between advantage and disaster faster than we anticipate. The irony is that micro-decisions feel empowering. They feel like autonomy, control, agency, when in reality they are the very mechanism by which unseen forces shape our lives. Every habitual response, every fleeting impulse acted upon, every convenience embraced with a thought is a thread woven into a larger tapestry that may unravel unexpectedly. And yet, humans are predictably negligent. We prioritize comfort, desire, and perceived efficiency over attention, over foresight, over deliberate consideration of consequence. that negligence is the perfect fuel for risk. Small choices are deceptively benign because their immediate outcome seems irrelevant, but the latent effects ripple outward, intersecting with variables you cannot control, interacting with forces you cannot predict, compounding over time until a tipping point arrives. At that tipping point, the chain of minor decisions manifests as a single, undeniable consequence. It feels sudden, dramatic, almost unfair, but it is the logical culmination of innumerable tiny actions, each rationalized, each seemingly insignificant, each ignored as harmless. And that is why risk is most dangerous in its smallest increments. It is patient, invisible, and relentless. It does not demand your attention. It does not shout. It does not negotiate. It simply exists in the space between decision and consequence, in the gaps where human oversight, desire, and distraction meet, accumulating quietly, persistently, inexorably, until the weight of all those small, seemingly trivial choices comes crashing down, reshaping outcomes, exposing vulnerability, and leaving you to realize how something as subtle as a fleeting, seemingly harmless choice could ultimately dictate the path of your life, your fortune, and your control in ways you never anticipated. Temptation, disguised as reward, is one of the oldest tricks in existence, and yet humans fall for it repeatedly because it speaks to desire in the softest, most persuasive tone. It doesn't shout, doesn't threaten, it doesn't demand, it whispers, it glimmers, it shines just enough to distract, to allure, to make caution seem unnecessary. You see it and immediately imagine the possibilities, the fulfillment, the satisfaction that could come if only you reach for it, if only you step closer, if only you trust the promise it radiates. That promise is the trap. Temptation never reveals itself as danger. It dresses up in forms that are familiar, acceptable, even necessary, and you convince yourself that yielding is rational, that pursuing it is justified, that the risk is worth the reward. And for a moment, it feels that way. Your reasoning aligns with desire. Your instincts are softened by hope, and suddenly hesitation feels like weakness. You rationalize just this once. What's the harm? I can handle it. And that's precisely the moment when the trap tightens its grip. The brilliance of temptation disguised as reward is subtlety. It does not arrive all at once. It layers itself over days, hours, moments, small gestures, hints of opportunity, fragments of excitement, until the mind believes that engagement is necessary, logical, inevitable. You begin to notice how easily it shapes perception. The ordinary suddenly feels extraordinary. The harmless feels essential. The forbidden feels desirable. And the moment you embrace it, you start to rationalize every subsequent choice, every hesitation, every instinctual warning that tells you to step back. Desire is patient, insidious, and relentless. It plays on timing, attention, and human psychology. It knows that people are wired to prioritize gratification, that curiosity and ambition are easily seduced by potential, that the mind will bend evidence and logic toward hope, when hope is wrapped in shiny packaging. Every time you convince yourself that yielding is acceptable, the trap strengthens. You start noticing patterns that justify indulgence. Everyone else does it. I've earned this. What's the worst that could happen? The mind constructs reasoning to align with desire, but beneath it all the risk silently accumulates. Reward is the perfect disguise because it promises closure, pleasure, or advancement while masking the cost. It tells you that fulfillment is within reach, that satisfaction is attainable, that success, recognition, or relief is just one step away, and you step because the step feels inevitable. And temptation thrives in that inevitability. It doesn't coerce, it doesn't force, it doesn't confront directly. It allows the mind to lead itself into compromise, to act in ways it would never consciously allow if it recognized the danger, to rationalize irrationality as opportunity. The most cunning part is the timing. Temptation rarely strikes when you are full, alert, cautious, prepared. It arrives when you are tired, distracted, emotionally vulnerable, or just confident enough to believe that you can outsmart the pull. And each small concession, each small engagement, each fleeting indulgence builds momentum, creating a path of choices that feel natural, inevitable, and justified. The trap is almost invisible because the mind is willingly participating. You are not forced, you are seduced. You are not threatened, you are enticed. You are not blind. You choose to ignore the flashing signs in favor of the glittering promise, convincing yourself that the danger is exaggerated, that the reward outweighs risk, that hesitation is foolish, and slowly, invisibly, consequences accumulate. The cost of indulgence is not immediate. It creeps into behavior, perception, priorities, and judgment. You start rationalizing bigger risks, ignoring more warnings, bending rules, dismissing hesitation, until the line between pursuit and surrender disappears. By the time the true nature of the trap reveals itself, the momentum is unstoppable, the engagement irreversible, the consequences undeniable. And that is the genius of temptation disguised as reward. It does not fight you directly. It does not confront you openly. It lures you willingly, make you believe you are in control, making you feel justified, making every step feel like your choice, until choice is no longer choice, and reward has transformed into consequence, pleasure into cost, indulgence into trap, leaving you to marvel at how something so alluring, so logical, so careful, disguised, could dismantle caution, reason, and restraint quietly, methodically, and perfectly, without ever raising its voice or showing its teeth. You ever notice how people beg for change, but the second things start shifting, they panic? Oh, it's funny. They sit there day after day whining about how stuck they are, how nothing ever happens for them, how they're waiting for a breakthrough. But the moment the ground starts moving under their feet, the moment life starts rearranging things, they don't see it as an answer. No, no, no. They see it as a problem. They call it bad luck. They call it unfair. They act like they're being punished. You ever notice how people love stability? Oh, they cling to it like a security blanket, like a child holding on to their favorite toy. They wake up at the same time, eat the same food, talk to the same people, complain about the same problems. Routine, routine, routine. It makes them feel safe, makes them believe they have control. Control, oh, that's the funniest illusion of all. Because right when they get too comfortable, right when they start thinking they've got it all figured out, life decides to shake the table. And suddenly, their precious little world, oh, it starts crumbling. Now, what do most people do when that happens? They panic. They start screaming, why is this happening? Why is everything going wrong? Oh, they think it's an attack. They think life is punishing them. They don't see it for what it really is. A shift. A big, messy, uncomfortable, necessary shift. Because nothing changes without disruption. Nothing moves until something forces it to move. You think people just wake up one day and decide to grow? Ha ha. No, no, no. People don't change unless they have to. They don't evolve unless something pushes them. And that's exactly what life does. It pushes. At first, the signs are small, tiny cracks in the foundation, things that don't feel right anymore. A job that used to excite you, now it drains you. A relationship that used to feel solid, now it feels off. You try to ignore it, you try to act like it's nothing, but then life turns up the heat, and suddenly those tiny cracks, they start splitting wide open. That job? Gone. That relationship falling apart. That plan you thought was foolproof, shredded to pieces. And now you're standing in the middle of chaos, wondering what the hell just happened. But here's the thing. this isn't the end. No, no, no. This is the beginning, because every time life disrupts you, it's not to destroy you, it's to move you. It's to shift you out of a place you don't belong anymore. But most people, they don't see it that way. They spend all their energy trying to put the broken pieces back together, trying to fix what was never meant to last. They cry over closed doors, not realizing that door had to shut so they'd stop banging their head against it. Oh, it's tragic. Watching people fight for the very thing that's keeping them stuck. And you know what's even funnier? They ask for this. They beg for it. I just want more. I just want to be better. I just want to step into something greater. Oh, do you now? Well, how exactly did you think that was going to happen? You thought life would just hand you a neatly wrapped package labeled growth and let you stay exactly the same? Ha, no, no, no. You don't get more without losing. You don't go higher without being shaken first. You don't step into the next level without leaving the old one behind. But here's where it gets real messy, because when things start falling apart, when everything you depended on starts slipping away, you have two choices. You can either resist it, hold on so tight that you break your own fingers in the process, or you can trust the shift. You can let go. You can move with it instead of against it. But that takes a different kind of mindset. That takes knowing that disruption isn't punishment. It's preparation. It's making space for what's next. But most people, oh, they can't see past the wreckage. They don't realize they're standing in the ruins of a life that wasn't big enough for them anymore. And that's the problem, isn't it? People want the new without losing the old. They want the blessing without the breaking. They want the destination without the detour. But it doesn't work like that. If life is disrupting you, if things are crumbling, if everything feels like it's spinning out of control, oh, that's not the end of the story. That's just the setup. That's just the beginning of something bigger. But most people, they don't see it. Not yet. You ever notice how people say they want to go higher, but they don't want to leave anything behind? Oh, it's hilarious. They talk about growth, they pray for change, they beg for something bigger. But the second life starts pulling them away from familiar faces, familiar places, familiar routines, they start kicking and screaming like a child being dragged out of a toy store. No, no, no. I want the new thing, but I want to keep all my old things too. Oh, that's not how this works. That's never how this works. See, people love the idea of elevation, but they don't understand the cost. They think they can climb higher while carrying everything and everyone with them. But let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a rocket take off? You ever notice what happens? Oh, at first, it's got all these boosters attached, all these heavy pieces that help it launch. But as it rises, they start falling off. Piece by piece, stage by stage. Not because something's wrong. No, no, no. Because they're not needed anymore. Because if they stayed attached, they'd pull the whole thing down. That's how it works when life starts shifting you. Some things, some people, were only meant to get you this far. They were part of the launch, not the destination. But people don't see that. Oh no, they take it personally. They think losing people means something's wrong. They try to hold on, try to drag old friendships, old relationships, old mindsets into a season where they don't belong. And that's why they get stuck. See, the higher you go, the lonelier it gets. Not because you're meant to be alone, no. No, because not everyone can breathe at high altitudes. Some people, they're only comfortable at a certain level. They like the version of you that stays the same, the version of you that doesn't challenge them, the version of you that doesn't make them feel small. And the second you start rising, they get uncomfortable. They start pulling away, or worse, they try to pull you back. And here's the crazy part. Most people let them. Most people feel guilty for growing. Can you believe that? They shrink themselves so other people feel comfortable. They pretend they don't see the shift happening. They try to convince themselves that it's not real, that they can stay the same and still get to where they're going. But life doesn't negotiate. When it's time to go higher, it will strip things away, whether you like it or not. And the ones who fight it, the ones who refuse to let go, they end up stuck in between, too big for where they were, too afraid to step into what's next. And you know what's even funnier? The ones who leave, they'll try to make you feel bad for moving forward. They'll say you changed. They'll say you forgot where you came from. They'll say you think you're better than them, but let's get one thing straight. You didn't change. They just refused to stay. And instead of growing with you, instead of making the shift too, they chose to stay behind. And now they resent you for moving. But here's the real test. When people start falling away, do you chase them? Do you stop your own elevation just to keep them close? Do you lower yourself so they don't feel left out? Because that's where most people fail. They don't realize that some losses, they're necessary. Some goodbyes, they're part of the process. And the minute you start fighting what life is trying to remove, that's the minute you stop yourself from rising. People think isolation is punishment. They think if they're losing people, if they're finding themselves alone, something must be wrong. But they don't get it. You don't lose real ones. You don't lose the ones who are meant to go with you. The ones who fall away, they were never meant to stay. And if you knew what was coming, if you knew what life was preparing you for, you wouldn't mourn the ones who left. You'd understand that the ones who stay, those are the ones who can handle the next level, the ones who belong where you're going. But most people, they don't see it. Not yet. You ever notice how people pray for change but panic the moment it starts happening? It's hilarious. They sit there, hands clasped, eyes shut tight, asking for a breakthrough, begging for a shift, crying for something big, something new. And then the ground starts shaking, doors start closing, people start walking away. Nothing feels the same anymore. And what do? They freak out. They think everything's falling apart. They think they're losing. But let me tell you a little secret. Nothing new comes without destruction. Nothing. You want a new building? You gotta tear down the old one first. You want to be stronger? You gotta rip those muscles apart before they grow. You want a new life? You gotta let the old one crumble. But people don't like that part. No. They just want the good stuff. They want the blessing without the breaking, the victory without the battle, the next level without losing their footing for a second. But that's not how this game works. See, when life starts shifting, it doesn't come with a polite little warning, no memo, no gentle tap on the shoulder. No, it hits you hard. It pulls things away. It snatches people out of your life. It shakes everything you thought was stable until you're left standing there, looking around, wondering what the hell just happened. And That's where most people lose. Not because they weren't meant for something greater, no, but because they couldn't handle the transition. Oh, transitions. People hate them. You know why? Because they're messy, uncomfortable, unpredictable, and worst of all, lonely. See, when life starts shifting you, it doesn't happen in a crowd. It's quiet. It's isolating. People you thought would be there forever, gone. Places that used to feel like home, suddenly suffocating. And you're standing in between what was and what's coming, stuck in this weird, unsettling space where nothing makes sense. And that's the real test, isn't it? Right there. When everything feels like it's slipping through your fingers, do you panic? Do you try to hold on to what's leaving? Do you run back to what's comfortable just because the unknown scares you? Oh, that's what most people do. They cling to old relationships even when they've turned toxic. They hold onto dead-end jobs even when they hate them. They try to rebuild what life is trying to tear down because they don't trust the process. But trust? Oh, that's the whole game. If you only knew what was on the other side, you wouldn't be so afraid. If you knew what was coming, you wouldn't waste time crying over what's leaving. But that's the catch, isn't it? You don't get to see the full picture yet. You don't get the answers in advance. You just have to believe that the shift isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. And that's where people crack. Because let's be honest, most people don't really want change. They say they do, sure. They pretend they're ready. But the second life starts getting uncomfortable, the second things stop making sense, the second they feel alone, they start questioning everything. They think they made a mistake. They think they should have stayed where they were. They think the shift is a punishment instead of preparation. And that's what keeps them stuck. Because here's the truth. Before anything big happens, before anything great comes, there's always chaos. Always. It's the storm before the breakthrough, the breakdown before the blessing. But people mistake the storm for a sign that things are going wrong. They don't see it for what it really is, a sign that something big is coming. Because when life gets loud, when everything around you starts crumbling, when people start walking away, when doors start closing, that's not a coincidence. That's a setup. But you gotta be still long enough to see it. Most people, they run, they panic. They start grabbing at whatever's left, trying to put things back together instead of letting life rearrange itself the way it's supposed to. And that's why they miss it. Because they were too busy holding on to old things to see the new things standing right in front of them. You ever notice how people beg for a fresh start, a new beginning, a different life, until the moment it actually starts happening? Oh, it's funny. They sit there, eyes closed, hands folded, whispering to the sky, "Give me something better, take me higher, open doors for me." But the second life starts answering that request. The moment things start shifting, moving, changing, that's when the fear kicks in. That's when the panic starts. That's when they start looking around, trying to hold on to everything that's fallen apart. Because see, people don't really want change. No, they want the idea of change. The pretty version, the smooth transition, the one that doesn't hurt, that doesn't disrupt, that doesn't make them uncomfortable. But real change, real elevation, that comes with fire. That comes with isolation. That comes with losing everything you thought was permanent. And That's the part no one ever prepares for. It's like this. Imagine you're climbing up a ladder. You take one step up, then another. Feels good at first, right? You're moving. You're going higher. You're getting closer to what you think you want. But then something happens. The higher you go, the more unstable everything starts to feel. The people who were standing beside you at the bottom, they're not there anymore. The things you used to rely on, suddenly not as steady. The further up you climb, the more alone you feel, and then, then you look down. And that's when it really hits you. Because now you've got a choice. You can either keep climbing, keep moving, keep trusting that the top is worth the discomfort, or you can panic. You can try to scramble back down, back to where it was familiar, back to where it was safe. And that's exactly what most people do. They say they want to grow, but the second things start shifting, the second they start losing people, the second they feel alone, they start running backward. Because this is where it gets real. See, when life starts elevating you, it doesn't do it with a crowd. No, it does it in the quiet, in the dark, when no one's clapping for you, when no one's holding your hand, when you look around and realize you're standing alone. That's the part no one talks about. That's the part people hate, because we like company, don't we? We like knowing we've got people by our side, but here's the thing. Not everyone can go with you. Not everyone is meant to climb as high as you. And if you try to drag them with you, you're just gonna slow yourself down. And that's what people don't understand. They think losing people is a sign that something's wrong. They think the silence means they're off track. But no, this is the test. Right here, can you keep moving when no one's cheering? Can you keep trusting when it looks like you're losing? Can you keep going when you don't have the answers? When you don't see the full picture? When everything inside of you is screaming to turn around? Because this is how life works. You say you're ready for more. You say you want to be great. You say you're built for something bigger. And life? Life will check if you mean it. And the way it does that, it starts pulling things away. It starts shaking your foundation. It starts taking away everything that isn't strong enough to go with you. And that's when most people fail. Not because they weren't meant for more, not because they weren't capable, but because they couldn't handle the shift. Because shifts, they don't come with a warning, they don't send you an invitation, they just happen. One day everything feels fine, and the next, you're looking around wondering why nothing feels the same anymore. The friends you used to talk to every day, suddenly distant. The things that used to excite you, no longer interesting. The places you used to run to for comfort, now feel suffocating. And if you don't know what's happening, you'll think you're being punished, but you're not. You're just being moved. Because you cannot take old habits into a new life. You cannot take dead weight to a higher level. And if you won't let go of the things holding you down, life will rip them away for you, not to hurt you, no, but to free you, to prepare you, to clear the space for what's coming. But you don't see that part yet. You're too busy looking at what's leaving. Because see, people say they trust life, but they don't. No, they trust what they see. They trust what they understand. But trust? Oh, trust isn't about understanding. Trust is about knowing. Knowing that even when everything looks like it's falling apart, it's actually falling into place. Knowing that even when you feel alone, you're actually being positioned. Because shifts, they don't just take things away, they make room. And if you let yourself break down just because you don't see what's next, you'll miss what's been waiting for you all along. Oh, you think change is supposed to be gentle, don't you? A nice little tap on the shoulder, a polite whisper in your ear, telling you, hey, something new is coming. But that's not how it works, is it? No. When something big is about to happen, life doesn't knock on your door and ask if you're ready. It kicks it down. It wrecks the room. It flips everything upside down, throws your favorite things out the window, and leaves you sitting there, dazed, wondering what just happened. And the funny part, the funny part is that you asked for this. Yeah, you prayed for this, didn't you? You sat there wishing, hoping, begging for something more. You wanted change, you wanted growth. You wanted something big, but what you didn't realize was that before something big happens, everything has to shift. The ground has to crack, the walls have to fall, and the life you got comfortable in, it has to break apart piece by piece. Because here's the thing. Before life gives you something greater, it has to take away what's less. But people don't like that part. No, they cling, they hold on, they fight to keep what's slipping away. They cry over closed doors and scream at the sky, why is this happening to me? But that's the joke, isn't it? You wanted more, but you don't want to lose anything first. You want to rise, but you don't want to leave the ground. You want to see what's next, but you're too busy holding on to what was. See, before life hands you something bigger, it makes sure your hands are empty. You can't grab the new while you're clutching the old. You can't receive something greater when your grip is locked around what's familiar. So life starts taking, first, little things, small shifts, a few unanswered calls, a job that suddenly feels suffocating, a friendship that starts feeling distant. But if you ignore it, or if you pretend you don't see the signs, then life has to get a little louder. Because life is funny that way. It doesn't ask you if you're ready, it makes you ready. You ever notice how right before something big happens, everything feels wrong? You feel lost, you feel alone, you start questioning everything. What used to make sense suddenly doesn't. What used to feel good now feels off. It's almost like the world around you is shifting, but you don't know why. And you panic. You resist. You try to force things back to how they used to be. But that's not how this works. No, that uneasy feeling, that's not a mistake. That's not life punishing you. That's life preparing you. That's the old falling away. That's the space clearing. That's everything you thought you needed being stripped away so you can finally get what you actually need. Because life has a funny way of testing you. Before something big comes, it doesn't just give it to you. No, it asks, are you ready? And the way it asks, it starts taking things away. It removes your crutches. It takes away your distractions. It pulls you out of the crowd and puts you in the quiet. Because if you can't handle the silence, if you can't handle the waiting, then you're not ready for what's next. And that's where most people fail. Not because they weren't meant for more, but because they weren't willing to let go first. People love to talk about faith, don't they? They love to say, I trust life, I trust the process, I trust what's meant for me will come. But the second things start disappearing, the second things get uncomfortable, oh, they show their true colors. They don't trust, they want control. They don't want to wait. They want proof. They want to see the next step before they take it. They want a guarantee before they let go. But that's not how life works. No. Life doesn't give you a safety net. It doesn't give you a step-by-step plan. It gives you a choice. Hold on to what's dying or let go and step into something bigger. But letting go, oh, that's scary. That's the part that keeps people stuck. Because what if what's coming isn't better? What if this is as good as it gets? What if you let go and end up with nothing? That's the game, isn't it? That's the test. And if you fail, oh, life just leaves you where you are, right there, stuck, holding on to something that isn't meant for you anymore. Because life will never force you to move forward. It will only give you the opportunity. It will only shake things up, remove what's not serving you, and then wait. It will wait for you to let go. It will wait for you to trust. It will wait for you to stop gripping the past with bloody knuckles and finally open your hands. And that's when it happens. That's when everything shifts. But most people, they never get that far because they're too afraid of the fall, too afraid of the unknown. Too afraid of stepping into something new without knowing exactly where they're going. And that's why so many people stay stuck. That's why so many people live small, limited half-lives. Not because they weren't capable of more, but because they weren't brave enough to let go first. Oh, you think life hands out rewards just because you want them, just because you asked nicely? No. Life doesn't work that way. You don't just wake up one morning, stretch your arms, and suddenly, boom, everything you ever wanted is sitting at your doorstep tied up with a pretty red bow. No, life is trickier than that. It plays games, it sets traps, it tests you, and if you're not ready, if you don't know how the game is played, you'll think everything is going wrong when really, oh, it's all going exactly the way it should. See, before something big happens, before life hands you what you've been asking for, it likes to take you through a little obstacle course, a fun little preparation phase. And you, you're sitting there frustrated, confused, looking around like, why is everything falling apart? But you're asking the wrong question. It's not falling apart, it's coming together. It just doesn't look the way you expected.